Firing up the camera here. So this is our second VideoCast episode. Super excited to be joined by Derek and Darylle. For this episode, we talk about mental health and what it means in the tabletop gaming space. We actually had a really cool thing that we did and we'll be doing twice a year. It's called our Mental Health Awareness Week. So we're going to do this twice a year where we close down the doors to our store. Our online store will still be open, so you can still place orders online. And what's really cool, if you do, a percentage of those sales go towards a nonprofit. So last time we donated to stackup.org, and actually that episode will be out next week. I interview Steve for our next VideoCast episode, and we talk about their nonprofit and what that's all about. And they are a nonprofit that helps veterans combat suicide and mental health and create positive mental health for vets through gaming and geek culture. So excited to have Steve on. If you cannot wait for that episode, we actually recently had him on for a live stream. That's available to replay on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch as well. Before we get into this episode, I want to share something else. So if you're local to LA, come stop by if you're a Magic player, because we got some special gifts dropped off by Nshan from Giving Elephants. So follow him on Instagram. I'm really excited to have these. They're pretty cool, like booster packs, I guess. He created them a while back and he donated them to our store to give away to our community. So super excited to have that. Very thankful to Nshan and Giving Elephants. So any Magic the Gathering purchase you make will give you this bonus as well while supplies last. All right, enough of that. Let's look at those cards, the Magic cards, and then let's get into the episode. Nshan from Giving Elephants dropping off some Magic cards. He's here on most Sundays doing our Pokemon meetup, but we're excited to have him here. He's dropping off some Magic cards. Come stop by the store, pick up a little pack while supplies last. We got the man himself.
Hi everyone. Giving Elephants here. We just dropped off a few free Magic cards at Dustin's at BGE's. Our channel is dedicated to giving nerdy stuff away for free, so please check us out.
Yeah. Welcome to BGE's Tabletop Talk. This is Dustin from BGE's Tabletop, and I'm super excited to be joined by a couple guests tonight. We're going to talk about designing a game inspired by mental health. So we just closed up the store. We're going to welcome on Derek and Darylle here. They're both from You're Right, You're Wrong Games Co. Welcome to the show. I know you're both co-creators, but you mentioned there's a little distinction in what you both do with the game You're Right, You're Wrong. Do you mind introducing yourselves a little bit?
Yeah, I'm Derek. I'm the game developer.
And I'm Darylle, and I kind of float between like marketing and operations of things, but I feel
awesome. So
she helps. She helps develop the game, provides the input, tells me what we can and can't say.
So how did you get started with designing the game?
Wow, we went through so many iterations to begin with. I mean, in the beginning, the game was based on fallacies, actually, and characters were different. Everything was different. We just kind of came up with what we came up with after, I think, 8 iterations. So how did we start with
all the way back to the beginning?
Well, in the beginning, like when Derek said, I have this idea of creating a game inspired by arguments, my brain first went to interactive games. You know, things like That's What She Said, things like Cards Against Humanity. And so like that's what I thought we were creating. And so I thought, okay, we'll have examples of arguments, things that people bicker about, and it was in my mind that that's how the game's going to be. And then Derek actually introduced me to a whole new world of light strategy card games. So that's why he's more of the designer on the games, because he has had his hand in like knowing how some of these different game styles work, whereas I've kind of just played them as the mainstreamer. And so when he brought the first iteration to me, it was on cue cards. It was just, hey, Darylle, run to Staples in the middle of a pandemic, like nothing's open, and just get some cue cards, write out these words on X number of cards, and we're going to meet on a Zoom link and try to play a 2-player game with physical cards across from each other online, because we didn't know about Tabletop Simulator or any of that stuff yet. So it started off honestly as absolute noobs, and we just had to adjust a lot every iteration that we went. But even though Derek said there were 8 of them, a lot happened in between of just me learning how this works, us learning how are we going to create a game inspired by arguments, etc. So I don't know if that gives a little bit more context to the beginning.
That's awesome. I was mentioning to you before we were recording here that I've seen your game around TikTok a lot, and I really like your art design and the characters and all of that awesome stuff. So,
Thank you.
how did what inspired you for the game? You mentioned, Derek, you played some more light strategy games. Darylle, you're more from a mainstream perspective. Were previous games inspirations for this one, or was it do you want to share a little bit more about that?
It's a bit about both. So I run a design studio regularly, and in our office we had in about 2016. I think many will remember the year, what it was like. We had a real bad office spat, and fitting to the times, there's a lot of rhetoric going around, and it was just this petty argument, and we were arguing about things, making assumptions, and taking it really personal. And it just got to this ridiculous level where I just kind of feeling my head is just, this reminds me of a game like Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh, where you're taking turns just teeing off on each other. So the whole mechanics came to me as this life, like real life situation was happening. Yeah. So that was kind of the inspiration for the mechanics and the theme.
That's cool. So it was a real life argument to get to to the card game now. Would you mind sharing a little bit about how the game plays? And then we'll go kind of into our topic of mental health.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to say it follows the flow of an argument, but each player starts with 5 cards in their hands, and they take turns drawing a card and picking a card on their from their hand. The cards have wacky sayings that you would say in an argument, and you play the card and deal with the consequences written on the card. Some cards restrict your hand. Some cards restrict your next play. If you run out of cards, you lose. If you break a rule, you lose. And yeah, the last person standing wins. There's a little sneaky twist in this, though. Unlike a lot of those that card games, all the attack cards and a majority of the cards actually are bad for you. So it's become a game of survival instead of a game of attack. And you want to choose your least worst option. So if you want to draw the parallels to real life around that, it's up to you.
That's really cool. I think it's a clever take on Take That games, because I know with Take That games, I feel like you either love them or hate them, right? There's people that love to just rib their friends and play cards that screw them over, and then there's people man, I worked so hard for that. I don't want you to take anything away from me. That's really cool.
Deck building, right?
Yeah, you have the two extremes, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
So let's kind of switch gears into you said the game kind of was inspired by mental health, and how did that come about? But first, what does mental health, and I guess what does that mean to you guys, to both of you?
Who wants to go first?
Derek, you go first. I'll go after.
Well, mental health to me is our ability to live life happily, fulfilled, meanwhile maintaining our physical health and needs. However, I kind of just feel that there shouldn't even be a distinction between mental and physical. I mean, Stress is the epidemic of the 21st century. Stress is a physical response, it's physical neurological response, and you can shorten your lifespan from stress and anxiety and lots of things.
Yeah, and for me, I mean, something my dad had said to me a lot when I was younger was, is it better to be right or to have that relationship? And it took me a long time to really put my emotions aside and embody that. And I think that when we sort of look at life, taking yourself back of the immediate situations that you're in and just appreciate things more and appreciate people, appreciate yourself, self-compassion, just all of these factors, life is just so much more fulfilling. And so with I'm Right, You're Wrong, the game, I mean, that one's about arguments, but we have other ones coming out that are going to be about egos, that are going to be about the way that we speak to ourselves internally. There's a lot of different ideas and these different concepts, and tying mental wellness into board games, card games, is just general things that everyday people go through. And I think that games and having fun are things that everyday people do as well. So if we can just kind of shed some form of light and awareness and normalcy around that is kind of what inspires me. I don't know if I answered that question properly.
No, for sure. I don't think there's a wrong way to answer the question. Yeah, for sure. I mean, we just ended, so we're planning to do this twice a year where we close our store for 5 days. And I'm not entirely closed. Any staff or anyone on that works in the store will be closed, and during that time we're going to raise, our online store will be open, quote unquote open, and you can still make a purchase online, and we're going to donate a portion of our sales to a nonprofit. But the whole idea is to raise awareness to mental health and why it's important to take that break. I mean, I learned about this idea from a business book, and it's called Clockwork by Michael Michalowicz. And his whole idea is being able to run a business without you like clockwork. But he has a colleague in the book that talks about her closing her business twice a year because of the idea of mental health and why it's important for her, and how closing your business twice a year is not going to make you go out of business. A lot of us think maybe, oh my gosh, you're going to close for 2 times out of a year. How are you going to survive? But it's kind of refreshing to have that opportunity to do that.
Yes. And I think that's a big part, a big contributor to why Derek and I felt so connected with this theme and the business the industry or whatever that we wanted to get into is mental health, because we've both been entrepreneurs for most of our lives. And I think that entrepreneurs are notorious for not taking care of their mental health, no days off, working all of the time. And
I go to sleep, I lose money.
Yeah.
Sure.
So it's not so much we're coming in as the grand authority as counselors and psychologists, but more we've walked the walk. We've seen what not to do, and how can we just kind of take our experiences and make light of them. So I think that's it. It's just making light of it.
For sure.
Yeah.
I would say. Oh, no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and we chose games as the platform because it's fun. It brings people together, and what better environment to learn something new and reflect.
Yeah, and going with that, I would say games totally are something that help create positive impacts on people and ourselves, right? Well, I mean, you can get pretty intense about some video games. I've seen some rage quitting and stuff like that. So if you're
rage
maintaining I guess if you're maintaining a healthy relationship with games, I think it's a little bit more difficult to do that type of rage quitting with tabletop games versus maybe video games. I don't know. Maybe someone can argue against that.
Yeah, well, you're in person, so that's always changes the dynamic.
Right. That's
for
so
sure.
true.
So you mentioned you have other games that are coming out that are inspired by mental health. So what made you decide that
we need a game like this? Like, why your specific game? Why is that important to you?
Well, we chose topics that are a little bit more relatable, and we really wanted to address these, but without being preachy, without being all self-helpy. We didn't feel that there were anyone that really did this the way that we'd like to do it. And on top of that, we chose light strategy card games and inclusive games because we want to um, bring more people, build the community up, bring more mainstreamers into the fold, just like how we were kind of brought in as well. Sort of that gateway. And it's important, I think, to note that for games, especially our game, is when we were like play testing it, it really tripped out a lot of people that a lot of people are playing card shedding games. A lot of people draw after their turn. There's all these like new mechanics, and it created this new environment to rewire your brain, rewire your thinking, your perception of stuff. And it was just that perfect opportunity to look at these themes in a different way. And I think that in terms of not just games, but even mental health products, traditionally there's not that many things that are fun, and that's what we wanted to do, is make it fun first.
There's entertaining, there might be enjoyable, there might be results based, but is there something out there that's just fun
First?
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. So would you want to share a little bit about your game, or is that top secret?
The new ones?
Yeah.
I mean, we can share some, but
Okay.
not all.
Okay.
So, I mean, Derek, where would we start with some?
I'm gonna say you're the one to tell. You
Okay.
usually tell me what to say and what we can say and not to say. You're the grand. I think
Yeah.
you got to use your discretion. I might spill too many beans.
Okay. So we're coming up with 2 in the next year, I would say. And one of them I'm making, one of them's Derek is making. We thought we should just gamify the process of making board games and card games, sorry. And we'll kind of like compete against each other in a healthy way, kind of. And so mine, we wanted to make something that was even more introductory, because our whole goal is to bring more people in. Like let's say you play Magic the Gathering, you can't just bring your new date in for like a night of Magic the Gathering. Like, it doesn't work that way. And so we wanted to find a way to like bridge that gap between gamers and mainstream. And what we realized putting this game out there is that even though to the people who play a lot of games, this one's quite easy, to people who don't play games and only do Jenga, it is quite hard. And so we wanted to have like a tier of different levels of introductory games. And so mine is very, very basic, but it's about talking to yourself nicely. So being a less harsh on yourself, but looking at it in a humorous sort of way. And the irony of the game is that when you talk nice to yourself, it feels contradictory because of the nature of the mechanics, so it makes it a little bit humorous. I'm trying to like not give away too much while at the same time giving some context. And then Derek's is more, I think, going to be a one-up from I'm Right, You're Wrong. I feel like it's going to be a step up in terms of strategy, but we'll see what that one comes to. And his is more about the demons kind of that we deal with, mental health, mental wellness, and trying to get rid of those demons, if you will. So I think that's all I could really say.
Mechanics is a little bit about prioritization and I guess you can say prioritization and deck building in a certain way. Yeah. It's a game about life, though. It's
Oh yeah, that's a good example. Yeah,
yeah.
it's a game of life.
We try to choose themes that are relatable.
Cool. You say deck building, sort of. I know you did something different with Take That, so I'm curious to see what that sort of means for deck building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
But
So
I think that's all I can say.
Yeah, I feel like I did a terrible job describing these games because I'm like, how can I say it without saying it?
I mean,
Anyways.
I think it makes sense if I can sum up like your games about self-talk, and well, I'm a little confused about Derek's. It sounds like lifestyle, but also like coming to terms with like ourselves and who we are. But I could be way off.
Let's leave that to interpretation.
Yeah. I
Okay.
don't want to say too much about it just yet. I mean, I break something up. It's still a work in progress.
Okay. Cool. So, what are some things that you could or you should consider about designing a game like this? I know if I can share an example of, it's been a while since I had this talk on a board game with education. This was our former podcast, Board Game with Education. We had someone on the show that talked about designing a game based on being bipolar. And so, of course, there's a lot of things you had to consider. And he himself was bipolar, and he also tested with a lot of groups that also shared similar, I guess, mental illness. What what are some things you might have to consider when designing games that are touching on a more sensitive topic?
Yeah, that is a really good question. I mean, part of the reason why we went through so many iterations is because we had to dial it back again. And sometimes we think of something as fun is sensitive. So for sure, we have to uh, be aware of those things. We're not always going to get it on the first try. So luckily we have play testing and we can just gauge the reaction of the crowd.
Mm,
I mean, we try to make things fun first for the reason that it's easily digestible. We don't want to be preachy, yeah, and we don't want to come up with a game that looks like someone just nicked it from the therapist's office. But in that quest to be fun first, edgy, that cool kid, the cool big brother, we do have to consider, being too cool. We don't want to be too cool of a parent or something like that.
right.
Yeah. That
So
was also
definitely.
how these our characters came about too, was because if we were to use real people or not to put a face in front of it, it just became a little bit too harsh or hitting close,
Yeah.
cutting a little bit too deep. And so that was an idea, was to just build characters around it and kind of like make it softer, make it something where you're watching rather than something that you're actively participating in. And like those characters are going to carry into, I think they're going to carry into our other games. They all have that. We haven't really totally unrevealed. They're just going to kind of unload as we go. But I think that's it. It's a combination of making sure that it's fun, finding that balance between hitting the feeling without making people feel the bad parts, making them feel the good things, being relatable in that sense. And like the play testing is really important. That's something that we learned because we play tested with a lot of gamers, yet our game is mainstream. And so, and if I were to go back in hindsight, I would have done equal levels. I would have done play testing with a lot of gamers, and I would have done equal play testing with people like how I was in the beginning, like, oh, what's that type of game? And and because now the marketing aspect of it is like, well, how do we bridge those people in? This is made for them, but they don't like it. There's a little bit more of a learning curve there. So I think that's important, is the entire process of learning how you're going to explain it, learning how you're going to create it, and all of that. So
Yeah.
I ramble a lot. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I like how you mentioned like creating the characters to kind of remove yourself from it. It just reminds me of playing diplomacy, and one rule that I've had where we cannot. I don't know if you've played Diplomacy, but it's very like cutthroat. You have to backstab people in the game or you will not win. Like you have to betray people. That's part of like being able to win the game. So you don't call people by their names. You call them by their country. Like, oh, France is going to do this instead
Oh
of
my
like
God.
Dustin is going to do this, because you don't want to like bring it too close to
Yeah.
get feelings hurt, because it is a pretty like it's a pretty intense quote unquote friendship ending game. But I've never lost a friendship playing it. But
Huh. That's interesting that they do that.
yeah. I don't know if it's in the rule book. It's a rule that was passed down to me by other players, and so we
Gotcha.
played it. Cool. So before we go into our game, is there anything else we can talk about or discuss about mental health, or maybe a last word of advice you would share as far as like, let's go with helping people use games for mental health, and or if someone was looking to design a game for mental health?
Well, first of all, games are a mental health product on just by nature, just by bringing people to the table, making an event out of it too. It is, and having fun. It gives you environment to practice conflict, like you say. Instead of just saying someone by pointing fingers directly. There's just for in terms of advice, I'd say is to try to understand who you're speaking to, and really try to just with the intent of bringing more people, making it more inclusive, and it will already make the world of difference. Yeah.
I have this vision of seeing, shelf sections where it's, these are like the wellness games or something of that nature. And it's not just like, oh, here's Right Wrong Game Co. who makes them. There's a bunch of them. I want the competition. and for somebody who wants to join that shelf in particular, I think that, in my opinion, I don't know whether it's right or wrong, no pun intended, is just don't be afraid to say the things that are taboos. Like, don't be afraid to be authentic. Don't be afraid to feel like you might get judged from being different, because those are literally the things that cause us to feel anxiety and insecure and stress, is like hiding who we really are. And in order to move into a subject like mental wellness inspired games, I mean, you have to embody that. You have to embrace it. So I think that's the foundation of getting started.
That's awesome. Two awesome words of advice to end on. Cool. All right, so we are going to move into our game, and I mentioned we're playing 5-second rule. So
Oh yeah, okay.
If anyone's watched or listened to the podcast already, they kind of know how to play. But for anyone that hasn't, and both of you have never played, so a refresher. I'm going to share my screen here. So if you're listening on the podcast, you won't be able to see this, but I'm just sharing my screen for the slides so they can see the topic as well as hear it when I say it. So when I click it, it's going to give you a timer.
Okay.
So speaking of anxiety and stress, so when it
It's not
goes down to
helping the cause.
1, when it goes down to 1 is when I will click the next slide.
Okay.
So when it goes down to 1, we'll start with who wants to go first.
I'll go first.
Well, how does it work?
We just get to practice.
Okay.
Yeah, so
practice.
actually we're gonna go right into it, because
Oh.
I think there's only 4
All right,
topics.
I'll go first. Whatever.
You're
Okay,
gonna go
okay.
first? Okay. So when it goes to 1, I'm gonna click the mouse and it's gonna show you the topic. I will read it, and then you'll name 3 things based on that topic. So I'm gonna actually wait till 2, so I have 1 second to read it. So on 2, we're gonna go animals.
Hippopotamus, elephant, alligator.
Oh, got it. All right, so we'll go to Darylle. Things you find outside.
Grass, flowers, and trees.
All right, 1-1. Back to Derek. We got 5, 4, 3, 2. Electronic devices.
Cell phones, toasters, and microwaves.
A toaster and a microwave. I don't think I've ever heard those for electronic devices before.
Toaster.
but it counts.
Oh my god.
3, 2. Insects.
Ladybugs, wasps, and ants.
Okay, and I think we do have 5, but how should we do this? Tiebreaker? Do we want to do a tiebreaker and then so if you don't get it, you don't win. If you get it, you win. And who wants to do the tiebreaker?
All right,
Oh,
I'll do
like
it.
what? Okay, yeah, you did.
Okay. I think there's only one more. Superheroes.
Oh, I'm so
Superman, Spider-Man, the Wasp.
Oh man. Just barely. There is one more. There is one more. So this could be for a tie.
It's the wasp one. Okay.
Board games.
I'm right, you're wrong. Risk and Exploding Kittens.
All right. Right. Oh man. So it looks like you both got 3 and 3.
Good game, man. Good game.
Good game. Good game.
I think everyone's done pretty well with these topics so far this season. I don't know when we're gonna release these episodes, so if you're listening or watching, you this might be one of the first couple episodes, or this might be later. But yeah, everyone's done pretty well, so that was good.
I feel like you're dealing with competitive people.
Yeah, but yeah, and it's interesting the board games one. So we've had some other guests that have designed board games. They always say theirs first, which is fine, but they're also very long titles. So
Yeah. Oh my god.
so it's
and,
like,
and
oh,
like that one had a thought process behind it because I'm like, I only have 5 seconds. I'm like, am I gonna say my own name? Yeah, screw it. Okay, say my own name. And then I'm judging myself like, am I gonna say the most basic board games right now? Yes, I am gonna.
You picked the most classic, and you picked one of my favorites.
what was the third one? I missed the third one.
Exploding Kittens.
Exploding Kids. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It was the one that got me in.
Yeah.
Exploding
Before
Kittens.
that, I was pretty much Jenga, Lupin Louie. Those
Louie.
good.
Target
Mousetrap.
classics. The Target classics.
Yeah.
Awesome, Derek and Darylle.
thank
Thank you so much for coming on. If you don't mind just sharing where people can find your game, where they can find you, and all that awesome stuff.
Sure. Yeah, you guys can find us at rightwronggame.com, and we're on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, Right Wrong Game. Follow us on TikTok.
Awesome.
You can
I don't
find
know.
us
I
in
think it's
stores everywhere soon.
Oh yeah. Oh my God. Go to the stores. Go to the
Yeah.
stores.
Please
Stores.
support local.
Yes. No.
We will
Yeah.
have-
That's the big
We'll
one.
have some copies for sure. Well, more than likely, we ordered them, so hopefully they make it to us. They should.
Yes, and
They
BGE.
will. Yes. Erase,
Especially BGE.
erase everything I just said. BGE.
All right. Cool. Yeah. So thank you so much. And we'll hopefully see you around soon. I know I'll see your game on TikTok a couple more times. So thank you for coming on
Awesome.
the show.
Thank you, Dustin. Hope you have a good night or day or whatever
Yeah.
time you post this.